The movie starts on February 3rd, and that day is our main character, Walter Sparrow's birthday. He works at Animal Control and looks forward to celebrating his birthday with his wife, Agatha, that evening while looking at the time. However, about a minute before the close of work, he receives a call from Sybil, his supervisor, to tell him about a dog that needs taming. He's angry with Sybil for ruining his plan that day, but he acknowledges that he's never treated her well, leading to her perfect revenge. Walter tries to tame a wild dog using a story, successfully luring it in, but gets distracted by the dog's name, Ned. In the meantime, Ned escapes. He chases Ned to Laura's cemetery. Meanwhile, Agatha prepares his birthday cake and waits for him at the bookstore. While waiting, her eyes catch the attention of a book titled Number 23, and she takes it. Before Walter arrives, she flips through the book and reads some parts of it. When Walter arrives, his future self reveals that the day marks the end of a typical life, leaving him uncertain whether to attribute it to destiny or fate. All he knows is that if he hadn't met Ned that day, and he hadn't come late to his party, Agatha wouldn't have found the weird book that disorganized his entire life. He meets Agatha in the bookstore, and she tells him about the book. When they see that it is a book about obsession, she offers to buy it for Walter as his birthday gift. Later that day, they join other family members for the celebration before returning home. Walter wishes for a great time and opts to stay outside with Agatha to ensure their son, Robin, doesn't interrupt their fun. That night, Walter starts reading the book, as he narrates about the writer's nickname, Fingerling. The following day, he meets with his work counselor because Ned has bitten him. The counselor gives him a day break at work, and he uses the entire day to read this book. He narrates about Fingerling and claims he loved books as a child. The reason he's studious isn't because he cares, but because he knows education is the only thing that can take him out of that shithole called the town. His father was an accountant, and no matter how much he loved his father, he never wanted to be like him because he was too money conscious and never gave him the attention he needed. Growing up, they had a neighbor whose dog ran into their house. He would always chase the dog back home, but the only rule his father gave him was that he must not follow the dog out of their compound. He obeys this rule until his 8th birthday, when he eventually follows the dog to his neighbor's house and finds his neighbor's dead body in the house. The police investigate the case, and they close the case as suicide. But he believes the lady was killed by a deranged murderer, which is one thing that spiked him into becoming a detective. Agatha arrives and meets Walter, reading the book. Walter tells her he feels Fingerling is writing his life story because he also grew up with the same childhood. But Agatha tells him Fingerling is nothing like him, and he should read the book completely before comparing. He tries to convince her that his neighbor also had a dog. He had always chased the dog, which inspired him to work in animal control. She insists that it is not his story, and he should move on. Walter continues reading the book. In the next chapter, Fingerling has now become a detective, and he has a girlfriend, Fabrizia. They are so in love, and they take pleasure in having fun everywhere. On his 32nd birthday, he gets a job to convince a suicidal young lady whom he calls Suicide Blonde. He convinces her not to hang herself and jokingly says it's because it's his birthday. She is then seen satisfied with his reason. She starts telling him how the number 23 is haunting her. She can't do anything without the number, and the number will kill her. She asks Fingerling to ask her boyfriend if he needs more evidence. To be fair, Fingerling doesn't believe all she is saying, so he tells her a story to convince her and assumes she now wants to live. When he leaves her apartment, she jumps off the window and dies. He is disappointed and visits her boyfriend the next day, but finds him dead. He meets Fabrizia later, and when he tells her what he has gone through, she gets turned on, and they make out rigorously. However, since that day, he has also seen the number 23. He goes to the hotel with Fabrizia, where he hears the available room is number 23, and he also notices the time is 23:00. He keeps a secret from Fabrizia, and in their room, she requests him to tie her up and simulate her death. Despite his deep love for her, he cannot bring himself to harm her. However, that night, he dreams about killing her. The next day, Walter wakes up and counts his shoes in their house as 23. He tells Agatha how much the story relates to him, telling her his name equals 23. His social security number, his identity, the fact that they colored their house red, and all other facts. Robin even finds out their house address equals 23. He visits the bookstore to learn about the author, only to discover it's the author's sole work. He continues reading until Fingerling reveals that after intercourse with Fabrizia, he counts her shoe and sees it's 23 too. Agatha feels uncomfortable with his obsession and recommends he speak with her friend Isaac, who advises him that numbers are just conspiracy theories. He should finish the book and confirm if it mirrors him. As Fingerling continues his story, he meets his boss at work, Phoenix, telling him all he is going through, and Phoenix advises that he take a break. He does that, but Fabrizia isn't comfortable with it, and she walks away. He angrily throws some of her shoes away, as it is 23, and when she returns, she throws shoes at him and walks away. He eventually catches Phoenix making out with Fabrizia and realizes he has lost her. He imagines throwing him off a window, but can't bring himself to do it. To make matters worse, Phoenix's tie is red, meaning 23 too. Walter recalls Isaac's red ties, connecting them to Isaac's romantic interest in Agatha. That night, Walter dreams that he killed Agatha, and he fearfully leaves the house the next day, leaving behind a letter for her. He goes to the same hotel where Fingerling stayed, with Fabrizia, and takes room 23. There he completes the story, which ends in chapter 22, and how Fingerling caught Fabrizia and Phoenix making out in the bush. How he killed Fabrizia and hid. But Phoenix enters, and he is arrested for the crime. The story ends where Fingerling stands by his window to kill himself like Suicide Blonde. Walter is unhappy at the end of the story and coincidentally encounters Ned. He angrily chases it to the cemetery where Ned lies beside Laura's tomb. He finds out Ned is the guardian of the dead and sees Laura, the owner of the tomb, died at 23 years old, and her body isn't found. He browses about Laura's death and sees her lover Kyle, who was arrested for the death, has the same story as Fingerling, so he assumes Kyle wrote the book. He visits Kyle at the prison, but Kyle denies killing Laura or knowing anything about the book, trusting Kyle's words as he doesn't have 23 in his name. Later, Robin reveals that he has found an address while reading the book. As a result, they decide to send 23 boxes to the address, hoping to lure the author out. The following day, a suspicious man comes to the mail office, and Walter confronts him. However, he says Walter should be dead. He attacks Walter and slashes his own throat after that. Agatha asks Walter to leave with Robin, but before the man dies, he gives Agatha an address to his institute and asks her to visit. Meanwhile, at home, Walter and Robin find hidden words in the book that direct them to an address, asking them to dig 23 steps. In the institute, Agatha finds a red room with 23 littered around it, and a box with Walter's name. As she opens it, someone approaches her. Upon digging, Walter and Robin see a skeleton, and they call the police. However, as they return, the bones can't be found again. Agatha comes to take them home, and they keep complaining that the murderer took the bones. He needs Ned in front of his car and attempts to run him over, but is unable to do so. At home, he notices mud on Agatha's hand and realizes she took the bones. He accuses her of writing the book and killing the victim, but she denies it. She admits to taking the bones and reveals he is the one who killed the girl and wrote the book. She shows him his box with his old things, and as his memory rushes back, he runs to the hotel. He tears the wall and finds chapter 23 of the book. After killing Laura, he carried her to the bush where he buried her, but Ned saw him. He decides to return to the room and write his suicide note, but that suicide note turns into a book with fictional names. After writing the book, he jumps out of the window, but he survives with a head injury and loses his memory, and his doctor gets the manuscript when he is taken to the hospital. As he completely loses his memories, the number torments the doctor, who eventually prints out the book in a disguised name. Upset, Walter cries in the room, but Agatha meets him there to console him. However, he fears that he may kill Agatha too, so he runs to stand in front of a truck to kill himself, while Ned is staring at him. That is when he sees Robin. He doesn't want Robin to get the same trauma he got after watching his father die, so he withdraws. He then reconciles with his family by hugging them. In the next scene, Walter confesses to his crime. Laura is buried at the cemetery and Kyle is released. Walter awaits his sentencing in a week, hopeful for a lenient judgment. He also sees the number 23 on the clock as the movie ends. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, leave a like to help the channel out, also leave a comment if you'd like us to recap your favorite movie. Thanks for watching.